So you've been thinking about moving and you're trying to figure out where's the best place to move. We're going to take a look at Nashville versus Chicago, and we're getting started right now. Welcome to the channel, and if you know anything about our channel, we're always looking for things around the Nashville area, but I wanted to do a comparison between Nashville and Chicago, Chicago being a much bigger town, much bigger city, massive city with millions and millions of people, versus Nashville, which doesn't have quite that many people. It's more of a smaller, large major city, if that makes sense. We're going to get started kind of walking through the pros and cons of both and what both of them have to offer so that you can maybe make a decision of whether maybe you're wanting to move to Chicago and this will help you, or maybe you're in Chicago and you're thinking, I'd like to move to Nashville, but I really don't know if I should, or, what it's about. What are the differences? What can I expect? We're going to take a look at all of that as we're kind of walking through today's video. I'm Michael, and Joshua, Caleb, James, David, and our team, we get calls from people from all over the country looking to make their move. Most of the time, they're calling me about Tennessee, but they're looking to make their move. And when they're making their move, they want to know, they have some questions, or maybe they want to know which area they should move to, or what can this area offer or that area offer. Well, we're here to answer any questions you may have, no matter what the questions. So feel free to reach out. You can give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, and we'll gladly help you answer any questions you may have or whatever in the home buying process. So let's dive in. Chicago, being a very, very large major city, has a lot of benefits. Now, I've never lived there. I want to be clear, disclaimer, never lived there. Been there many times, love Chicago. It's a great, great city. And obviously I am partial to Nashville because this is where I live. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the difference between the two. We're going to look at the economy. We're going to look at the housing market. We're going to look at the number of people, what the traffic's like, what the weather's like. And as we kind of walk through some of these, maybe it helps you understand a little bit different ideas about the two cities. Okay, so let's start with saying that Nashville does not have a beach. If you are looking for a beach, Nashville, Tennessee, all of Tennessee, is landlocked. There are no beaches. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not lakes and lakes that have beaches and water parks, and there's things to do in the water, and boats and jet skis and canoeing and river rafting. There are a lot of things you can do in the water, but we don't have the beach. Versus Chicago, which is on the lake. Now, it's a lake, it's a great lake, and there's beaches, but if you're expecting beaches in Nashville, you're kind of out of luck. One major thing to know when you're looking at the population between Chicago and Nashville, Chicago is much larger. Chicago has several million more people than the Nashville market does because it's been around a long time and there's a whole lot of people crammed into a really small space. Another couple of things about Chicago. Chicago has 7 more universities and colleges than Nashville does, and the overall economy, size of the economy is 700 million more dollars in Chicago, mainly because there's more people there than there is here. A couple of other things to know about Chicago is Chicago has a bike sharing program. It also has public transportation, which is much more massive than it is in the small little bus system that we have here in Nashville. Another thing to note is that there are 3 more sports venues in Chicago than there are in Nashville. Now, I'm trying to give you the idea of everything that's going on in Chicago. We'll talk about some of the stuff in Nashville as well. But as you can see, Chicago being a much larger area, a much larger city, has more to offer. And what I mean by more to offer is they have more architecture, more iconic architecture. There's a lot more museums there, a lot of things to do in Chicago that are just truly amazing. The skyline is amazing. Sitting right on the water, unbelievable. It's a great, great place. Okay, so let's move on to Nashville for a little bit and kind of walk through a couple of things there. Nashville is called Music City. It is one of the main places where you can find music on every corner, literally every corner. Not that you can't find music in Chicago, but this is Music City. The temperature difference between Nashville and Chicago, the overall temperature is about 6 degrees higher in Nashville than it is in Chicago, mainly because it's a little further south. Like I said before, have not lived in Chicago, but I have lived in Michigan, and Michigan's right next to it. So that could be something that I would know a little bit about. It is really cold in the north in the winter. As far as the differences in temperature, we'll talk more about that when we talk about the weather. But keeping moving on, in the Nashville area, plenty of museums. There's a Country Music Hall of Fame. There's all kinds of country artists museums. There's many, many things to do in the downtown area. We do have sports and sports arenas and sports. We have the NFL Titans, and we have a soccer stadium. So there are opportunities to go to sports events. It's just not the same as the iconic Wrigley Field like there would be in Chicago. A couple of other benefits that we'll talk about as we're talking about the economy and some of the things that are going on in Nashville. Nashville is a growing city. Chicago is actually a somewhat declining city. People are tending to move out of Chicago because the job market is not as strong as it is in Nashville. That doesn't mean people are moving from Chicago to Nashville all the time. It just means that the Nashville market is a strong and growing job market. The overall unemployment rate is about 3.6% less in Nashville than it is in Chicago. So let's dive into the cost of living between the two cities. As we're going forward looking at both of these, there are some similarities between the two cities, but then there's definitely some differences in certain parts of the cost of living. First of all, the median income is about $65,000 for both areas, so that's not much different. The median age is right around 34 for Nashville, 35 for Chicago. And the unemployment rate is about, I'd already mentioned this, but it's about 4.5 in Nashville. It's about 9% in Chicago. So it does leave a little bit worse unemployment rate, which in turn leaves the homeless population to be a bigger problem in Chicago as well. The average commute time between the two is average commute time is about 24 minutes in Nashville, and it's about 32 minutes in Chicago. So it takes a little bit longer to get from point A to point B if you're trying to commute into the city. So as we're comparing some of the cost of living items like groceries and health and housing, the market overall in both Chicago and Nashville is just slightly above the national average. Nashville being at 104, like 104%, rather than if the national average is at 100, Nashville's about 4% over, and Chicago's about 5% over than the national average of what the cost of living is as a whole. Food and groceries. The groceries in Nashville are slightly higher than the groceries in Chicago. Health is just slightly higher, like when you're going, doctor's appointments and things like that, is slightly higher in Nashville than it is in Chicago. Housing is definitely higher. The average home price or median home price in the Nashville market is about $460,000. In Chicago, it's about $285,000. And I know that varies depending on where you're at and what part of town you are in, but as a whole, the overall metro areas, that's what the difference in median household size is. Transportation is definitely less expensive in Nashville, and it's very, very expensive, and especially parking and passes and transportation passes and everything, much more expensive in Chicago for sure. I mentioned the job and talking about the unemployment rate. And part of the reason that's happening is there's an exodus of companies leaving the Chicago market for other markets that have better tax advantages. So when they do that, they move to places like Nashville. Nashville's been a hot spot lately for people moving their entire companies into the Nashville market because of the corporate tax benefits that are here in Tennessee. And by doing that, that's created more and more jobs coming into the Nashville market and the Middle Tennessee area. So when you're looking at the 3, 5, and 10-year growth patterns, here in Nashville, there's a growth curve moving in the upward direction for more and more jobs becoming available. And in Chicago, there is currently a decline in jobs available, which would also be part of the result of having a higher unemployment rate. Okay, so let's move on to the weather. There's a little bit of a difference in the weather. As far as averages, they're kind of similar in their averages for certain parts of the year, but then there's definitely some differences when it comes to Chicago versus Nashville in certain parts of the year too. The overall rainfall in Nashville is about 49 inches per year, and in Chicago, it's about 38 inches per year. But that is offset in part of the year because there's a lot more snow in one of those two cities. Anybody got a guess? Yeah, that's right. There's an average of 3.6 inches of snow per year in Nashville, and there's over 35 inches of snow in Chicago because it is further north. Obviously, you're going to get more snow. So there is a big difference in the precipitation as far as the icy, snowy, easy for me to say, precipitation. So when you're looking at the two, you got to keep that in mind. The weather in the winter months can be brutal in the north. The average July high is about 89 degrees in Nashville, and it's about 83 degrees in Chicago. The overall average in January is about 26 degrees in Nashville, and it's about 19 degrees in Chicago. So you can see that there's a good bit of difference in the swing between summer and winter. It is, I won't lie to you, it is hot in Nashville. It can get hot in Chicago, but it's definitely hotter in Nashville. Okay, before we go any further, I wanted to kind of give you a quick reminder. If you like the videos and like what we do here at the channel, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notification, and then you'll get notified every single time we upload a new video. All right, let's get back to the video. Okay, now this is probably one of my favorite parts of the video where we're going to talk about the difference in entertainment. Both of them have some iconic things that you could go to and do. We're going to kind of talk through a few of those things. Chicago first, you got to hit the Navy Pier. The Navy Pier is amazing, and it's a great place to go. It's a lot of fun for your family. Definitely want to check it out if it's just a place you're going to visit, or if you live there, you definitely need to make sure you make a trip there for sure. But there are some unbelievable world-class museums. The Museum of Natural History. There's, I don't even know how many different museums. There's theaters. There's so much to do in Chicago, and you can't miss going down the mile. There's so much. The Magnificent Mile is unbelievable. Shopping to your heart's content. Like more shopping than you could ever think of doing. As it relates to sports, there's multiple sports teams. Obviously, there's the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago Bears, the Chicago White Sox, the Cubs. There's plenty of major league sports in Chicago for you to attend and go to. And if you live there and you grew up there, or you didn't grow up there, maybe you're a Chicago fan, no matter which side of which baseball team you're on or whatever, there's always something for you to do in Chicago. Now, moving on to Nashville. Nashville also has many iconic items that you can go to, places you can go to. There's the Grand Ole Opry. There's Country Music Hall of Fame. There's Music Row, where all the music labels are. There's definitely sports events. The Nashville Predators hockey team, the Titans football team is here. We have a soccer team, soccer stadium, Geodis Park is here as well. There's no shortage of concert venues. And then if you get down on Broadway, just like you have a Magnificent Mile of Chicago, you get down on Broadway, there's not a whole lot of shopping. There is some shopping, but it's more like boots and country, that kind of shopping. But there are an unlimited amount of bars, grills, honky tonks, everything you can think of when it comes to music here in Music City. It's right on the river, so while there's not a beach, there's definitely a river, and there's a river walk. There's plenty to do downtown, all kinds of places for you to visit, restaurants that you're going to want to check out as well. One more thing to take note of, Chicago has a lot of parks, trails, bike trails, things to do all across the city. Nashville has lots of parks as well. There's parks that you can go to that are like downtown, in the downtown area part of Nashville. There's also parks all across the city, outside the city, all around the city. There's waterfalls, there's hiking trails, there's biking trails, plenty of outdoor activities here in the foothills of Tennessee. Now, I don't want to come across like I'm too biased, but I am. I'm definitely too biased because I live in Nashville. I would rather live in Nashville, but I have lived in the north, and it was not a pleasant experience. It was way too cold for me. I'm a good old southern boy from Georgia originally, and just need a little bit of the South around me, I guess. So hopefully you have been able to see the differences between the two and kind of make a decision on, what makes more sense. For me, it needed to be a little bit warmer, and the temperature needed, not just the temperature, but it's greener most of the year. And we're in the foothills, and we're not too far from Eastern Tennessee, which is the mountains and Great Smoky Mountains and Dollywood. And there's a lot of opportunity here in Tennessee, not to mention there's plenty of jobs that are moving into this area. We have, over the next several years, major corporations moving into our city. Hope this video has been helpful and hope we can show you around town. We'll see you next video.